سلام، مهدی نوری هستم و توی این ویدیو با هم میخوایم بریم سراغ قسمت سوم از درس نهم کتاب American Headway سطح دوم. خب، توی درس‌های قبلی با همدیگه یاد گرفتیم که چطور میتونیم جملات رو به همدیگه مربوط کنیم با استفاده از conjunctions، یعنی حروف ربط. حالا میخوایم این حروف ربط رو با گرامر past perfect با همدیگه تلفیق کنیم و این تمرین رو حل کنیم. Join the sentences using the conjunctions. Put one verb in the past perfect. یکی از verb ها رو باید بذارید به شکل past perfect. برای مثال number 1.
I went to bed when I had done my homework. وقتی تکالیفمو انجام دادم تموم کردم بعدش رفتم خوابیدم.
Now you do the rest.
Two. After I had driven 200 miles, I stopped for coffee. یادتون باشه after همیشه با past perfect میاد. بعد اینکه 200 مایل رانندگی کردم نگه داشتم که قهوه بخورم. 3. As soon as she had passed her driver's test, she bought a car. به محض اینکه گواهینامه‌اش رو گرفت یه ماشین خرید. 4. I didn't go to Italy until I had learned Italian. تا وقتی که ایتالیایی یاد نگرفته بودم به ایتالیا نرفتم. 5. Although I had read the book, I didn't understand the movie. با وجود اینکه کتابو قبلا خونده بودم، فیلم متوجه نشدم. دقت کنید که یه فیلم و یه کتابی با یه مضمون دیده. یعنی مثلا کتاب هری پاتر رو خونده بعد فیلمش رو دیده. میگه با اینکه کتاب رو خونده بودم، فیلمو متوجه نشدم چی شد. 6. His mother sent him to bed because he'd been bad. چون که کارهای بدی کرده بود مامانش بهش گفت که برو بخواب. 7. She had burned the food so we went out to eat. چون که غذا رو سوزونده بود رفتیم بیرون که غذا بخوریم. 8. She made a delicious dinner but unfortunately I had eaten a huge lunch. با اینکه غذای خوبی پخته بود برای شام ولی متاسفانه من یه ناهار خیلی خوب خورده بودم و نتونستم بخورم.
Choose the correct words to join the sentences. 1. When I got home, I checked my email. وقتی رسیدم خونه ایمیلامو چک کردم. While میشه در حالی که. اینجا غلطه. 2. I cut myself while I was shaving. در حالی که داشتم شیو میکردم صورتمو بریدم. 3. He worked for the same company until he retired. تا وقتی که بازنشسته بشه برای یه شرکت کار میکرد. 4. I got out of the bed as soon as I woke up. به محض اینکه بیدار شدم از تختم اومدم بیرون. 5. She was thinking about her father as she was going to work. در حالی که dاشت میرفت سر کار داشت به پدرش هم همزمان فکر میکرد. اینجا از معنی while میده. 6. Before I went to bed, I locked all the doors. قبل از اینکه برم تو رخت خوابم همه درها رو قفل کردم. 7. After I graduated from school, I traveled for a year. بعد از اینکه از دانشگاه فارغ التحصیل شدم 1 سال رفتم سفر. And now complete these sentences with your own ideas. این جمله ها رو با ایده های خودتون کامل کنید. Comment them for us. We will definitely check them. برای ما کامنتشون کنیم. ما قطعاً چکشون میکنیم. For example, as I sat on the plane, I felt nervous because I'd never flown in a plane.
I lived in Thailand for a year, but I never learned Thai language. I met my wife while I was studying.
Now listening and speaking. My favorite writer. What do you know about the writer Harper Lee? درباره هارپر لی چی میدونین؟ She was American, Canadian, English. She wrote in the 18th, 19th or 20th century. She wrote about politicians, adventures, ordinary people. Ordinary people means like normal people like you and me. آدمای عادی و معمولی مثل من و شما میشیم ordinary people. Politicians, سیاستمدارا. Adventurers, ماجراجوها. Now, first we will listen to the first part of a radio program. I want you to look at the information about Harper Lee and correct the wrong information. فقط بریم اول سراغ هارپر لی. با نفر دوم کاری نداریم. اطلاعاتش نوشته شده. گوش بدین اونایی که غلطن رو تصحیح کنید. حتما قبل از اینکه لیسنینگ رو پلی کنیم ویدیو رو متوقف کنید. یه بار همه اینفورمیشن ها رو بخونید خودتون.
Track 9. My Favorite Writer, Part 1.
Tom, you chose American Harper Lee as your favorite writer. Can you tell us a little about her? When was she alive?
She wrote in the middle of the 20th century. She was born in the U.S. in 1926, and she's still alive today.
What did she write? What kind of books?
Interestingly, she only wrote one novel, but it won a Pulitzer Prize in 1961.
And tell us, why is she famous?
At the time she was writing, there was a lot of inequality between blacks and whites in the southern U.S. states. Lee wanted to bring attention to this problem. She wrote about racism, specifically the racism she saw while growing up in a small town in Alabama. Lee created some of the most famous characters in American literature.
What is the name of her book?
It's called To Kill a Mockingbird. It's about a young white girl whose name is Scout, and how she becomes friends with a black man who is accused of a crime he did not commit. As the story unfolds, Scout realizes that people are the same inside no matter what the color of their skin is. In fact, it has a lot of autobiography in it.
Fascinating. Did she write anything else?
She wrote several magazine articles, but mostly she stopped writing after the great success of her only book.
What was Lee's personal life like?
It's hard to say. After writing To Kill a Mockingbird, she disappeared from public life. She refuses almost every request for interview. She has said, "I have said what I wanted to say, and I will not say it again."
Did she ever marry?
No, she never married. But she's very close to her older sister, who's 98 years old and still practices law in Alabama.
Amazing.
Now let's check our answers.
When? 20th century, not 19th. What kind of writing? Several magazine articles. Reasons for success? Wrote about people in southern US states, not northern. Best known books? To Kill a Mockingbird, not Rocking Bird. Best known character? Scout, a young girl who becomes friend with an accused criminal. accused یعنی متهم، criminal یعنی مجرم. یه مجرمی که متهمه ولی هنوز ثابت نشده. Personal life, single, not married, close to her older sister, not brother.
Now let's listen to the second part, this time filling some information about Robert Louis Stevenson.
Track 10. My Favorite Writer, Part 2.
Now, Alice, you chose the British writer Robert Louis Stevenson. Tell us about him. When was he writing?
Well, he was born in 1850, and he died in 1894, so he was writing well before Lee in the second half of the 19th century.
And what did he write?
He wrote novels and poetry, and he was also a travel writer.
Oh, tell us, why is he famous?
Well, he isn't as famous as other writers of his time, but he's very popular because he's a great storyteller. His stories are about adventure, danger, and horror. His heroes are pure, and his villains are dark.
What are his best-known books?
There's a children's book called Treasure Island, and there's a travel story about France. But the most famous is the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
And they, I suppose, are his most well-known characters.
Yes, the book was a great success. It's about a man who has two sides to his character, one good and one bad. The man, Dr. Jekyll, has a battle inside himself between his good and evil side.
This is the psychological idea of someone with a split personality?
Yes, in everyday speech, we say about someone, "Oh, he's a real Jekyll and Hyde," meaning there are two sides to their personality.
Fascinating. Tell us about his personal life.
As a child, he was sick a lot. He married an American woman who had children from an earlier marriage, but they didn't have any children together. He traveled a lot to Europe and the U.S. He died very young, when he was just 44.
Well, thank you, Alice, for telling us about Robert Louis Stevenson.
When? Second half of 19th century. نیمه دوم قرن 19. Kind of writing? Novels and poetry, and he was a travel writer. Novel یعنی رمان, poetry یعنی شعر. Reasons for success? He is a great storyteller. قصه گوی خیلی خوبیه. Best known book? Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. قراره که با همدیگه این داستان رو بخونیم. الان یواش یواش میریم سراغش. Best known character. مشهورترین کاراکتری که داره the character of the book that we just talked about. It's a doctor who has a split personality. همین کتابی که الان اسمشو گفتیم یه شخصیتی داره که شخصیتش معروفترین شخصیت این آقای رابرت لویی استیونسون هستش. Split personality داره یعنی یه شخصیت دوگانه‌ای داره. Personal life? He was married, he didn't have any children, and he died very young when he was 44. Now let's go to the story. Reading and speaking. Good and evil. Evil means very bad. شیطانی. Look at the pictures in this story of this strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Can you answer these three questions?
1. When and where is it set?
وقتی راجع به داستانا از ستینگ صحبت میکنیم و یه همچین سوالی ازتون میپرسن یعنی توی چه سالی و توی چه مکانی اتفاق افتاده. For example, this story is set in London in 1886.
2. Is it a romance, a horror story, or a crime story?
Romance, you know, like a love story. Horror story, داستان ترسناک. Crime story, داستان جنایی. It's a horror story.
3. Is it fact or fiction?
Fact یعنی واقعیت. Fiction یعنی داستان. میگه واقعیه یا یه داستانه؟ It's a fiction. Now, read this story quickly. Label these characters. این داستان رو خیلی سریع بخونین. فقط سعی کنین که اسم این کاراکترها رو پیدا کنین.
1. Dr. Jekyll. 2. Mr. Hyde. 3. Mr. Utterson. 4. Maid. 5. Servants.
خب رسیدیم به پایان بخش سوم از درس نهم. این داستان اگه خواستین یه بار دیگه خودتون بخونین، چرا که ما توی قسمت بعد میخوایم بریم سراغ داستان و با هم دیگه بررسیش کنیم. So let's go to the next video.